regrets. Do roll call. George?
Here.
David?
I'm here.
Coralie? Tyler? Jeff?
Yes.
Pat? Angela? Here. Matthew? So we're all here. I'd ask us all to pause to seek guidance. Okay. The next is the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions? If not, would someone like to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. The next are the minutes of February the 8th. Is there any errors or omissions?
I move approval of the minutes for February 8th. I'll second it.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, when I read the minutes, when it was talking about the assessment, that was from you?
The assessment report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke about it and Jeff spoke about it as well.
Okay, I just wanted to check because in the minutes I had something in my head and I wanted to check it. Okay.
Oh, one more thing. I apologize for my informal dress. I forgot my dress shirt on the kitchen table, presuming. I ran home and got it too, which is makes it a little bit galling that I managed to.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. The next, we have a presentation for the 1792 project. I would like to have someone move that they be able to present to our council.
So moved.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Hello. And welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for coming. So, we're going to let you start your presentation for us.
Okay, Catherine will start.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind putting up the slides, and thank you very much for your warm welcome. I would like to start with the first slide if possible. Thank you, Tyler. And if I just say next, will that work for the next slide?
Yep, that works.
Okay, great. So, hashtag 1792 project began as the 15 Ships to Sierra Leone message in a bottle, a nocturne art project at Pier 21. Next, please. Next. Thank you. So our presentation will have three parts. I'm going to talk about the origins and goals of the project, and Karen will take it away with a book of letters and Auburn Drive High School's involvement. And Carol will speak about the proclamations and the goals and achievements and how we'd like to involve the council. Next. Next, Tyler. Thank you. So this is the installation. It was a community installation, so students participated. We had 15 water bottles, and those water bottles were illustrated by students, and there was artwork as well. And the idea was to make a personal connection to a history that has been long overlooked. And even I, as an adult, having been educated in Canada, although I am an immigrant, was not aware of this history. So the 15 ships, this is the only illustration, this watercolor, left the harbor on January 15th, 230 years ago, with 1,196 black loyalists, and it is the largest single exodus of people of African descent returning to Africa. There were smaller groups to Liberia and the Armistice in the States, but Canada is the site of this voyage. And this watercolor can be seen at the Maritime Museum. In the foreground is a slave ship. So not only was this a perilous journey, but it was a journey of return where there were still memories, haunting memories of the first across. Next, please. So these are just quickly a little bit of the history, which you probably know. Lord Dunmore promised certificates of freedom, so the self-liberated individuals, the slaves who were able to cross the lines to the British to fight in the American Revolution, were promised land in Canada, and these were the Black Loyalists. Next, please. This was the proclamation, and next. Uniform of the Black Pioneers, and next. And there were promises made that weren't kept. So not only is this a story of amazing resilience and courage and hope, but it is also a story of failure. And those seeds of failure are really important to examine. And next, please. It's also important to understand what the white loyalist culture was at that time, and to understand that the arrival of substantial numbers of both enslaved and free Africans into an existing society where slavery was both customary and profitable immeasurably complicated the situation of the Black loyalists. Next, please. Thomas Peters, one of my staycations here in Nova Scotia. We've been living here since 2016. We follow the grandchildren. Was a trip to DIgby, which was marvelous. And I will come again, I'm sure. But one of the things I was looking for was some commemoration of Thomas Peters. He is a remarkable historical figure, and there's a statue of him in Sierra Leone. Next, please. And DIgby, of course, is one of the very important historical areas when it comes to Black Loyalist settlement. And next. Some more information, and next. So this is all background. And again, the promises were not kept in terms of land and resources and settlement. And next. This is the statue I referred to in Sierra Leone. And next, please. So this was what we were commemorating in this project. And we felt we needed to tell the stories. And by making a personal connection, by asking people to write letters to one of those seafarers who journeyed so far for freedom, and to reflect on the changes since then and the conditions at that time was important. And also not just on a personal basis, but to ask municipalities to look at that difficult history. And because they are so important as gateways to community, and they hold the trust of community, how any kind of racism or disturbance in that way is something that the municipalities have a big role in terms of change in. Next, please. So these are the goals: to connect personally, to include municipal governments as gateways to communities, to acknowledging the history that has often been overlooked, and to celebrate the resilience and determination of the Black Loyalists, and to look closer at the conditions that led to the Exodus, and how it may still have lasting effects in racism today, as well as celebration. Celebrate the arrival and the departure. So, I think we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Karen.
Okay, so good afternoon or almost good evening. And so it's my privilege to speak about the Book of Letters campaign. We actually got involved when Catherine, I met Catherine on a Zoom call for a presentation I was doing for I think it was the council at that particular time. And so at that time we were calling it was a message in a bottle. And so here you see some of our students who actually wrote letters. And so this campaign started in September 2021. I got involved in October, so it was close to the time where I met Catherine online there. And this campaign speaks to the issues and those conditions that were encountered by these self-liberating Black loyalists who left. And so it's an opportunity for us to bring attention to a history that has been overlooked and hasn't been told. And so we encourage young people to be part of this celebration and to commemorate this historic event. And so we invite community and politicians like yourself to learn about those 15 ships and the history of the exodus of the Black Loyalists. And so most people can know like Blue Nose, and they know the Titanic, and they know those ones. But do you know like Mary, and do you know the Eleanor and the Catherine and Venus and the Sierra Leone, the Morning Star? There's 15 of them. And so this is what we encourage the young people, is actually to delve into the information and find out more about the history of their own history in the making. And so our goal is to get students to find out more about this largest exodus of Black people who left, and to also to understand the history, the condition of racism, about those promises that weren't kept, those contracts that were broken, and how could they be fulfilled. And so the project speaks to the tenacity, it speaks to the resilience, it speaks to the determination of these individuals. And as educators and their first teachers of our children, we have a due diligence to make sure that we teach the rich history of our province and change the way the story is told. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the trajectory of how the story is told and how history is presented. So we invite everyone to write a letter to one of the seafarers. Our goal is to get 1,196. And we are now up to 300 letters. And we want you to think about the journey. The children who were in those boats, their experiences, how things have changed and how they're still the same. We want us to speak about the history of Nova Scotia and to look at this not just as a Nova Scotia, but this is a global history that we need to embark upon and write about. We want to recognize the emancipation. We want to recognize the autonomy that these individuals had. And we want to also recognize that inequities still exist within Nova Scotia. You can write a letter, and we hope that you take us on this journey and be part of it, part of history, and take us on in terms of writing a letter on behalf of your municipality and send it to Auburn Drive High School, 300 Auburn Drive. You can actually visit our website at Auburn Drive as well and see some of the letters. If I have one little minute, because I want you to hear the voices of the students. And I want you to recognize that we used a book from Dr. Lynn Jones called R is for Reparations, to remember. And it's so important that we remember the history. But I want just to give you just a little small piece of a letter that I got today from a young person. They said, we should have been taught about this in more detail, like much of the other parts of our history. Things here are different, but still the same in many ways. You would be proud but saddened of the things that happen here now. Across the world, the Black Lives Matter protests and movement began in 2020. 2 years ago, an innocent African-American man was killed by the police, like many others have been. The protests started after that, and many others who were wrongfully killed were brought up. And thousands of people from all different backgrounds protested. It is a time when things are starting to change. There are still many issues and racism. Now people are speaking up and standing up for others. I wish you could be here to see the way it is now. I hope you would find some comfort and some peace in the movement and the past faults being brought up and apologized for. You should be proud of your perseverance and the path you set for those to come after you. And so I leave you with those words because those are the words from our young people who are speaking truth to power. And I want you to also engage in part of that history and part of our educational journey. We have, that is what we're supposed to do as educators. It's our right and our purpose. We need to be intentional and deliberate in what we do. And now I'll turn it over to Carol.
Thank you very much. So I think you can just skip the next, or if you can go to the next, this is another sample letter. Thank you.
Again, thank you, and that was great, Karen. It's hard to follow that. I'm going to talk about the proclamation, and that we've already sent to the council. Our goal is to have every municipality in the province, town and municipal region,
sign the proclamation. And the proclamation, and not only within Nova Scotia, but also New Brunswick and all across Canada, federally and all the provinces, because this is not just a local history, it's a history that affects all Canadians. We feel the municipalities have a strong leadership role to play, and one of the ways that that leadership can be exercised is by proclaiming January the 15th an annual day of commemoration of the exodus of 1,196 Black Loyalists from this province. I might add that that's a great loss to this province. A great loss. And we need to commemorate that. And they left in the dead of winter for a better life that they weren't afforded here because of racism and vestiges of slavery that still linger today. It's important to repair the historic wrongs that were done, and this is a really great opportunity for all municipalities to stand up and say that, yes, we are commemorating this history. No longer will there be erasure. The Premier of Nova Scotia has in fact signed our proclamation, as have many other municipalities, and we invite you to sign as well. And publicize it, put it on your social media like many others have done. Thank you.
Is there any questions from anyone? David, go ahead, please.
I'm just curious if the Wesleyans are involved, because my understanding was that this was quite a Wesleyan. The Wesleyans are quite heavily involved with the movement with those boats, and there's a lot of Wesleyans still in Sierra Leone to this day. Is there anything about that? Because that was my understanding. Is in the history of DIgby, history and geography of DIgby County, that's how it's described.
Well, that would be a really interesting connection for us to make. Thank you for the question. I don't know if any of the others know. However, we do have an invitation for this Friday, which is on the next slide. And the mayor, Yvonne Aki-Sawyer of Freetown, is going to be receiving some of the proclamations that have been sent. So there is, and I think Karen may know a little bit more about who will be attending in terms of descendants on that celebration.
Oh, yeah, so we have Adrian Labor, who will be there, and he's a descendant. There's going to be the Archbishop as well, who's going to go to the water as well with the mayor, and they're going to receive and do, in terms of the water of the letters and part of the memorial. I'm not sure who else, Carol. Do you remember any other names?
And no particular names, no.
Yeah, I thought it was. I understand. I thought it was a religious movement a bit going back from here. I thought there was a lot of religion had a lot to do with it.
David George was the founder of the African Baptist Church, and he is a Black Loyalist.
The Wesleyans and the Baptists are very close.
There's tenets of religion, but the overall arching is also to, recognize those, I guess the only word I can think of right now is the reparation in terms of to repair some of the historic damages that have been done because of the loss that happened in terms of our people, the Black Loyalists leaving Nova Scotia to come here. So we are trying to commemorate that 230th anniversary so that we don't forget what has taken place. So there could be some opportunities where there be some religious overtones, but technically it's going to be historical in terms of the movement.
Any other questions?
Hearing none, I want to say thank you so much for doing the presentation. Both were, you were very interesting, all of you, and we do appreciate that you've taken the time to talk to us. So thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you for having us. Anytime.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
I don't think they knew that it was a Wesleyan project.
I don't know. The next, we are going to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business from the minutes of February the 8th? Hearing none, we will go on. The next is the CAO report. As you see, there is no meeting next week. Council's the 22nd. No meeting on the 29th, but on April the 5th, it's at 3 p.m. April the 12th is committee of the whole. April the 19th is the audit committee. April the 26th is council, my anniversary. And May the 3rd is the bylaw and policy. Is anyone not being able to attend any of the meetings? April the 19th, I am actually in Halifax, so I will not be here. On saying that, is there any questions from the CAO updates?
Linda,
Yes, sir.
do you ever work on these, like give calls, like what, like, here, I'll find an example. I think I brought up the concerns of, for the RCMP, for example.
Will I talk to the RCMP? Yes, I did.
Yes, but, I know this is a lot of years. I know we do, like, pick up the phone and try to push, call the Department of Justice, and, I know
Right
that.
now, I am dealing with the inspector of this area.
RCMP inspector?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious if you plug away at these. Good.
Any other questions? Okay, then we have the departmental reports. The first one is from our dispatch operator in charge. Is that?
That sums it up.
Yeah. He's in charge, and then we had no money, of course, and then there was a lot on for the dog control this month. They looked like they were. I shouldn't say they. He was very busy looking at that.
Yeah, it was. Jesus, never used to be like this. Guess everybody got a dog now.
So. The next one was the from Robert Hersey, and I wanted to ask on this one. He said he's been helping Jonathan. Yeah, that.
Yeah, I saw
And I
that.
read
Yeah.
down further and I figured it out.
Oh, you did?
Well, he was helping with the plaques there for the,
Oh.
the translators, so.
Yeah.
It's something to do with signage.
Okay.
If I could, those two things aren't, so he's been helping, so Jonathan is working on a separate project on some interpretive panels, and Robert has the contacts for translation, so they have been working together a little bit on that.
Mhm.
The plaques for the lighthouses is a separate project that Rob has been working on with Tyler.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wasn't quite sure there, that's why I wanted to ask.
Yep.
All right, then the next, does anyone else have any questions? All right, the next was the corporate manager of corporate services. Now, it said we're down to 22 properties. So will we be getting a list of that?
We can. It is on the website. She's taken them off as they get paid. So at any given time, you guys can have.
That's quite low,
or
isn't
I
it?
can get
Yeah, we've been under 20 for the last couple of years. So this has been something that was identified, I think, going back 5 or 6 years ago to work on through some of our municipal scoring. So Corley and her department and Nicole have worked very hard on getting this down. So even we're down under 20 now for sure. There's been properties cleared from this week.
Okay.
Property's
But
too
yeah,
valuable to.
a list, as soon as we print the list, it's outdated is the problem. That's why we
Okay.
use the
You got something
website.
But I meant
We had
close to the date.
three come off, I think, yesterday, 2 more today. I think that's what we're down to. So it's moving fast still, and there's still more expected. Last year, I think we were down around that 15 to 17, so that's where.
So you're not doing the 2 dates like we did last time? You can do an afternoon and a morning, like for the different sets of properties?
We did tender last year, paper, mail, and tender last year as well.
Will it be tender again this year or in person?
Is this tender?
It's tender.
No, but I meant, we had a couple of properties, there was a lot. Am I crazy?
I think that was the original plan.
Yeah, sorry,
Oh.
there was a lot of discussions last year, as the COVID rules were changing. By the time we got to COVID, it was paper, mail, and tender last year as well.
Okay. I was just thinking we were doing a morning.
So
and
no,
an
that's,
afternoon.
sorry, in the early stages, we had looked at it, but as the COVID rules closed in on us last year, we ended up with paper tender last year.
Okay.
So there definitely, within the group, there is one higher interest property than others left in this group.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, it's a very regular group.
Oh, okay. It's just that I was thinking, that's why I was asking, because I see it said by tender, but I thought we did a morning, afternoon, and tender for whatever.
No, we had looked at breaking them up into separate time slots, and then the COVID rules just kept on closing on us as we got closer and closer to tax sale last year.
That's 18 now.
Yeah, 18 there, right? So, which is good, right? Taxing, you want very few property. The system is working right. The fewer properties we have and the lesser high value properties we have, the system is working right.
Okay. The next is municipal services manager. Any questions on his?
I just was wondering with the new hangar,
Yeah.
how does that work? I'm not really sure how that, it's like.
So basically, we have land at the airport adjacent to the runway, and we lease the land and allow people to build their own hangars, so they just lease the property from us. So we have somebody interested in building a hangar. I'm working on drafting the lease, and it's looking like maybe like a June 1st start date. And then as soon as the lease goes into effect, he can build his hangar and have an airplane there and use the airport.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then we will go on to the Terry's report. Any questions? Just seems like he's always busy.
Always lots going on in those files, yes.
Try having an office next to him. A lot of meetings.
I would think he'd be so lucky.
That's right.
Or we should, what maybe he looks at it is, he has to have an office next to you.
Good, that's true. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
The two big highlights from Terry's are, so obviously I can say some of you drive by it and see it. So the big windmill continues to be down broken, right? The company we're working with is working good on. They've started with kind of the most obvious or the least expensive, and they're working their way through troubleshooting. But it's just, and the winter hasn't been super cooperative for work on it. But we're slowly but surely working through it. So Terry continues to be pretty occupied with that file. And then you'll see PACE, the group that's working on PACE. There's been a lot of talk with the other municipalities on what's happening with PACE. Most places have seen similar uptake to ours, which I would characterize as very low. So they're looking at changes or ways to try and improve that. So Terry's looking at that, and there'll be a document that he's working on for you to review. And then, like I say, he's up to all sorts of other stuff as well.
The next was the building inspector. Now that's it for, I thought that looked slow this month.
Yeah, this time of year we're into our quieter time of the year, right? And then sometime mid-April, May, that will explode and more than make up for the quiet months. I think the winter this year, our contractors have been able to build through the winter the last 2 or 3 years. The weather this year slowed things down a little bit.
No. Hard for fishermen getting in too.
And
Price is good though.
Yeah.
the next was a decision direction report, which would be our budget surplus, right?
Yes.
So, what would you like to say to us, Lily?
Basically, we just had two, I guess, more troublesome accounts this year. Leading into the budget process, we were quite aware of where COVID was at and what transpired last year and what accounts we needed to adjust. So, other than that, we did get the $333,000 in the equalization top-up grant that we weren't expecting at budget time. So that is sitting there, and as well, we have the D-transfer tax, which we had, I don't know how many times we talked about that one. We decided to budget $275,000, and we have well exceeded that. We're
Really?
at $499 right now.
Really?
So that's why we were thinking, take that money we weren't expecting and use it for something useful in our capital, upcoming capital projects. So the whole total. Sorry, I was going to say, yes, we're looking for a motion if you guys agree that we transfer $583,616 to cover those two.
And the big change from last year, so these were, this year was more normal. Last year, this was a much more challenging. We started this conversation in January. Remember, we had a lot of other accounts that were affected. So this year, a lot less, but the two that were affected obviously are quite affected. So it's a good news story. Again, neither of which could have been anticipated. There's no world where we ever would have anticipated that for D-transfer. And the province surprised us with the doubling of equalization, right? So this still leaves plenty of room in the budget for other variances, and this puts us in a good place to move these funds into our capital reserve, right? Puts us into a good place going into
For the future.
For the future, right? So
let's just not spend it all at once, Linda.
I'll make a motion to transfer $582,616 to the capital reserve for future planning.
I'd like to second that.
Any questions, George?
Yeah, before we vote on this, last week when we were talking about, giving money to some of those groups that, were looking for funds, such as, the hospice and some others. Is there any way we could use some of this money to do some of this stuff? Like, I know this is capital, where we're putting it to capital.
Well, it's not a capital now, so I guess that, yes, so right now, we have nothing budgeted to give to those groups in the current year budget.
We were talking about maybe 100.
So this builds in some flexibility into next year's budget, right? So right now, out of our operating, we have to take funds every year to put into capital reserves, because we're behind a little bit there, right? So by moving this kind of funds now, it allows us to have a more thorough discussion during budget on how we want to handle those requests.
Going forward.
It gives us some flexibility kind of as of April 1st on how we want to handle those. I'd say would be the most straightforward way to
I was thinking the same thing.
It does. It gives us the flexibility in the future to handle this a bit smoother or easier at council's will.
Yep.
You've been quite conservative, I think, with these sorts of things so far. We tend to put them in reserves.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Next is correspondence information items. Canadian Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board, the Fire Marshal's information, and East Hants letter. Any questions or concerns on any of those three? Well, hearing.
If I could, we just did gather some information. So the East Hants letter, I know may seem maybe interesting to some of you or concerning. So I don't have the exact formula here, but so NSFM memberships are built or build on, there's assessment is factored in and population. So the larger units pay, it's a different amount. So ours has gone up, but as our assessments have every year as well. Nowhere's near the same period of time that they're talking about, that they are 41%, we are 26%.
That is kind of.
So and we're talking, it went from in 1920 from $5,200 to $6,600 this year, right? So when we look at what assessments have done through COVID and those spikes, we see that any of the formulas where we see waste check, it reflects very minorly because it's a small pool of funds, but like any of those get affected year to year, right? So as far ours is not as drastic. So municipal units that are growing rapidly, which I believe we're at the leader in the province, is the author of this letter in growth.
That would explain it.
It would present challenges, right? I do understand. And there's lots of discussion, I think, within the elected world right now of NSFM and different aspects of that organization. So I think that would likely be what's behind all of us, all the units getting a letter like this.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay.
Thanks for the background on the fastest growing. That sort of explains things a little bit.
And next we have an in-camera personnel item. So, is Pat staying or?
No.
Okay.
I'll sit on the table like I usually do. Especially when the lights here. Since all you would do is sit. It was all quiet. It sounds ominous almost.
Oh, no, it's not. And
Yeah,
I think this
good.
is included in the package, right?
Oh,
Motion to go in camera?
second.
There's all in favor?
Aye.
All reminded? Okay.